Let's get a picks and bans for game number 2 here. PK with the first selection. Very interested to see where they go. I expect the Xbalanque ban and the Arthur ban and all that fun stuff.
Maybe not a Xbalanque ban from Pittsburgh Knights.
Yeah.
Maybe the Najah instead. No, I think Pittsburgh Knights would want to take the Xbalanque. So, and being in that first pick position, Dignitas are going to have to make the decision between Bologna, Xbalanque, and one of the two is going to get through to Pittsburgh Knights.
I think you've got to ban out the Shibby. Pittsburgh Knights can take the Bologna, and she's been very, very powerful. But maybe that's the naivety that has allowed her to win. She feels beatable compared to when you look at what King Arthur did when he hit the scene, compared to what Xbalanque feels like when he turns the lights out mid-team fight. She feels beatable, and then she's not. So I don't know. It's an interesting conversation that Dignitas are having right now. Is they'll have to respond to Pittsburgh Knights ban in a matter of moments.
Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm also fairly certain that Deathwalker has still maintained a 100% win ratio on the Bologna, so that's something else that I'm sure is sitting in the back of Dignitas' mind. And I get where you're coming from, though, for sure. The idea behind the Darkest Knights being so limiting inside of the jungle fights is definitely a tough one. But I love what Dignitas has done here. By going for the Merlin instead of the Xbalanque or the Bologna, they're kind of enticing Pittsburgh Knights to look for that Xbalanque first, because Dignitas, I think, are bound to take the Bologna. Or at least I would imagine that they don't want to let Pittsburgh Knights get the Bologna in the second and third, because I am pretty certain that is exactly the direction Pittsburgh Knights would go.
I'd have to agree. Dignitas making their selection right now, responding to the carry choice of Xbalanque. Curious to where they're going to go. Bologna will be the first selection overall for Dig. That makes sense. And here, I want to see a mid laner. I want to see a mid laner that we can take away from Zyrhoes. The pick coming through.
I think Dignitas might even be looking to take a Hunter, though, in their first three. They kind of have to, now that Pittsburgh Knights have taken the Xbalanque. If Dignitas don't look for a priority pick for Ataraxia, then Pittsburgh Knights are just going to be free to ban away, I think, Kronos or Jingwei. Basically ideal gods that would have the best kind of survivability in teamfights and in that laning phase. So the Hachimen, not really shocking to see Ataraxia opting for something that has good lane survivability.
Wants to make sure he can kind of contend in that lane. Pittsburgh Knights now on the clock. They've got to answer to a Bologna and a Hachiman. Answering Bologna in lane is kind of, any man's game. You can really select anything to go against her. You're probably not going to win that lane. You can certainly avoid losing that lane. I'd be interested in seeing some more Guan Yu. I liked Guan when we saw him a little while ago.
I think I'm a little bit more sold towards that Achilles pick. I think
Achilles
that
has been busted.
Deathwalker had a lot of influence in that first game, even on the Achilles, and arguably kept Pittsburgh Knights able to contest the Fire Giant at a lot of times where Dignitas seemed as though they were just about to get the upper hand. I also like the idea of Achilles because he has some interrupt for the Bologna bludgeon and can also, I think, counteract the Eagles rally, because when you're dealing with a firm execute, the Eagles rally, those prots, I mean, they're not as effective when you're just reaching an HP threshold.
That is a really big deal, bringing that up, and just as, very surface level. Achilles has been killing it lately. Real strong stuff. So pick him. Pittsburgh Knights could have teamed that up with a Jormungandr. So the Yorm could play solo or support. We've seen more solo than we've seen support, and we've seen more support than we've seen middle lane.
I think it's fair, though.
Middle lane again.
Whether it's for Zyrhoes in the mid lane or possibly even for EmilZy, I don't think that it's going to be too easy. Like I said, in game one, I didn't really feel as though the Jorm was doing a whole lot for Pittsburgh Knights, minus maybe one or two decent team fights where things came out a little bit more promising.
It's so different.
But I also think that, one game isn't enough to dictate how strong a pick truly is, when it didn't feel like Jorm was a problem for Pittsburgh Knights, but it also wasn't a problem for Dignitas, so I guess it's fair to run that one back.
That's kind of what I was getting at before, where it was like, we didn't really, it was a sunny day out, and I didn't get to see how well my umbrella did, right? Like, that's kind of what I was seeing. I need some rain. I need a chance for Jormungandr to go in and wreak some havoc, and then when it fails, we can say at least we tried. I don't know if game number 1 really counts for all that. But Team Dignitas is going to give Hera to their mid laner. And that's something that I am a big fan of. I think that she is very, very difficult to kill, and her long-range knock-up can be very interesting as well.
Definitely really strong when it comes to sieging and that objective play because of Argus. So Hera and Hurriwind, who I'm imagining is going to be the one taking that Hera, should have, I think, a significantly easier time self-peeling for himself, too.
Which is a big deal. Hurriwind does like to play characters like that, and we've seen him take the Hera out and look strong on it before. So it was earlier in the season, in the very beginning of the season, he was playing the Hera. So I'm very curious to see how Dignitas will fare with the, what is she, a queen? A maiden? A lady?
I think she's like a queen.
She's like a...
She's cute.
She's like a queen. All right. She cute. The hard-hitting analysis here from Taco.
You're welcome. That's what they pay me for.
Two of the stronger assassins, and yes, I've said assassins, banned out by Team Dignitas as they take care of Hebo and Ao Kwang.
I want to see a Humbats ban for Pittsburgh Knights. I think that Qvofred being able to take that Fear No Evil one more time into Pittsburgh Knights could cause a decent amount of issues for the Xbalanque, because even if you cut the lights out, no one wants to fight in the center of a Fear No Evil. And I think Qvo has also already shown how proficient he is on the Monkey Man, so we'll be curious to see whether or not he decides to take it for himself. Does have the opportunity to do so, possibly even... Well, no, I think Fenrir's a little bit too far-fetched here.
Fenrir would be a little bit rough because I don't think that Hera has that... Well, I mean, she does have that traditional follow-up. Fenrir could work out. I would be interested in seeing some Fenrir, but Dignitas going to go a defensive route first and foremost and leave their last offensive choice with the counter selection. Terra will be a guardian here by Dignitas. That's likely to be the support. I think this is kind of all cut and dry. Bologna solo, Hachi Terra duo, Hera mid, and then give us an assassin for the jungle.
I really want to see adapting on the Humbats. If Dignitas decided to take the Terra, right, so they want that Terra's Blessing, that's going to be a huge amount of burst damage that Pittsburgh Knights are going to have to worry about throughout engagements, but I think that the Fear No Evil could be really strong for them, adapting though, sticking true, I think, to some of those auto-based assassins that he's definitely been a pretty big fan of.
Ooh.
But the Bacchus could be a really hype pickup here for Pittsburgh Knights. It's not necessarily as threatening against Terra, but it's definitely going to cause some issues for this Hera.
And the Arachne might be the pick here for Pittsburgh Knights. And it will be. The Spider Lady locked in alongside the Drunk Man. Arachne will be the jungler of choice here for Pittsburgh Knights. That's going to be an interesting one. Bologna, of course, does have some disarm for that.
We've been bamboozled yet again. It's going to be Deathwalker on Arachne, adapting on Achilles.
It's going to be Jormungandr in the jungle in mid-Xbalanque.
Oh, we could really throw it all the way back and just say Xbalanque in the jungle. Shout outs to Proxy.
Yeah, and it's funny, you know, Proxy and Zyrhoes were the two Xbalanque jungles.
Proxy was an awesome guy. May he rest in peace forever, man. But
one of the
getting
OGs,
back to things, yeah, for sure. I think it's hard to forget about that Xbalanque jungle from back in the day, man. But Dignitas, all too ready to go right back to the wire with Pittsburgh Knights here. They want to go late. These teams, I mean, when your first game is 45 minutes long and counting, I can't blame you for wanting a Kali here.
Xbalanque will go late. Kali will go late as well. Looking at the other picks, I mean, Arachne a little bit earlier, but, you know, we'll figure that one as we keep it going. If the goal of the game is to go late, I think that Dignitas have already brought their caffeine with them. PK will have to kind of fight alongside that mid-game, but hey, it's 0-1. Dignitas have won above the opposition. Let's jump into game number 2.
Thanks, Tom. How could you expect anything different than another Jormungandr mid-game? Truly.
Of course.
Yeah, that's where he's played, obviously, at this point. So.
I mean, we've seen him a little bit in solo, a little bit in support, now a little bit in mid. Now it's only time for ADC and jungle, and he gets to complete the whole gauntlet, basically.
Well, I mean, were you inspired enough by what we saw from Zyrhoes last game that you're happy they're back on this? I don't think it was a detriment to the team.
I just don't think it did anything.
Sure.
I mean, it was okay, I suppose. I mean, Yorm does, like we said, it's hard to siege against because it's so easy for you to poke out at everybody else.
Right.
You get to kind of wall off those choke points with some ways of poison, but overall, I just don't think it really did the dive comp well enough.
Yeah.
I just don't think that Zyrhoes is willing to commit enough with adapting and with EmilZy to get into the enemy backline, and that's what that whole composition was designed to do. And I think the Chronos, to be fair, really threw a wrench in that whole plan, because we're going to dump all these ultimates and all put ourselves in horrible position. And if Ataraxia ever gets a rewind off, then they insta-lose the fight. So maybe this time around, they can do that a little bit more easily with this composition that Dignitas has.
Well, Dignitas looks like you said, they got a bit more of a traditional composition, right? It's the Hera in the middle lane this time, so there will be a regular mage actually in the mid lane this time, Hachiman as the hunter. But then they've got this late-game Kali that they're waiting on, and they've already got the Bellona on their side.
Yeah.
So there's no disarms or anything like that coming through. Kali's just going to be swinging.
I'll tell you what, I think this Yorm in particular needs to be very careful come late game, because Qvofred's going to get in there and he's going to eat, because it's going to be easy for him. How do you get away? Even that channel time of the World Serpent just kills you, basically.
Yes, you're still vulnerable at that point, yes.
You don't get a second and a half to get into the ground with a Kali on top of you. I also think this Hera pick is really critical for Dignitas, because if this is your mid, which the composition certainly looks like it, once she drops Argus, you're dazed because it's a knock-up. Yorm can't get knocked up, but he's slowed and takes 10% more damage for a little bit. And then how do you get away from Argus? You really don't. It's also really easy for you to get hit by Polymorph, because, again, you are massive, and the Polymorph projectile is pretty big. I think that this whole composition is going to center around how well can Hurriwind stay alive in the early to mid-game up against Jormungandr and Arachne and Bacchus and Achilles, these great dive gods.
They've got a ton of early game
on a god on Hera that doesn't get away particularly well.
Yes, I think that could potentially be interesting for him. And are we going to see that same start, right? Is it going to be EmilZy and Trixtank kind of running around the early game, or are they going to be on the solo side of the map this time? Because I don't know if you feel as rough about this one as you did in game 1, right? About your early game fight up against Dignitas. I mean, if you've got Bacchus, Jormungandr nearby, Arachne, you're feeling pretty good. You kind of want them to come up and fight.
Absolutely, and Terra level 1 is historically very bad. I mean, you can get your 2 and hope to stun and secure the buff. That's pretty good buff secure a lot of the time, but Bacchus has belly flop and just fights very, very well in the early game. I think that I wouldn't be surprised to see that another start where EmilZy's in the dual lane, or the solo lane rather, pretty early on. Deathwalker got a lead in that last game. He just wasn't able to leverage it because the rest of the map for Dignitas was ahead. Maybe if Pittsburgh Knights are able to get Deathwalker ahead and let him rotate earlier on, I wouldn't mind with this Arachne seeing Pittsburgh Knights be a little bit more aggressive early than they were in game 1.
I think you're right. That is interesting, isn't it? That really was kind of the whole point of that start, it felt like, was trying to get that lead over there in the solo lane, and then it never really materialized for them from Deathwalker in the performance that he had. I don't think the Achilles struggled by any means, but it's like they never were able to go, okay, we're 2 levels up, let's capitalize. That moment never happened. So maybe they will move away from that solo start then in that case. I don't know.
But that's because adapting was building Book of Thoth in the jungle.
It was real slow.
So it was a very slow build from adapting. It doesn't get pen until 5th item. You needed that ramp-up time, basically. This time around on Arachne, you don't. And so I think that you can still play that slower game in mid and the left-hand side in duo if you're Pittsburgh Knights, but play very aggressively on the right and get Deathwalker that lead and let him and adapting just kind of run your early game for you, and then hand the ball off when it comes to the later game.
And I imagine we'll be seeing this patented all-katana build coming out from him on this Kali, right? Like, as we like to say, she has the extra arm, so it makes sense for her. She can hold all those blades. Right?
Oh, is that why that works?
Yeah, it makes sense. You can put one...
That would be so horrifying.
She had like 4 of them.
I'm thinking like Toy Story-esque, you know, with that creepy thing in Sid's house where it just like comes screaming at you, but it's all katanas.
What a creepy guy Sid was, huh?
Really, it's super weird.
Yeah, definitely not.
They nailed the weird kid archetype, by the way.
Yeah, that's
everything
the kid.
About it.
That's the kid. Your mom's like, don't play with it.
Yeah, but like they're your neighbors, so she wants you to go over and play it first. And then she really like sees them a couple times. She's like, actually, maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah, maybe don't go over there. There's some weird stuff happening, and so hopefully there'll be some interesting stuff happening at least here in this set. And so far, it's delivered for me, man. 46 minutes right in that first game to try and figure out who was the better between Dignitas and Knights, and that's just getting started. I mean, and there's a ton of history between these teams as well, right? Obviously, the Zyrhoes, Trix, Qvo thing is all there in variety, so there's plenty to enjoy about this set.
And look, Trix played lights out that game. He forced a Fafnir ban here in game 2, but Trix was really a huge part of Dignitas getting that early lead for themselves, and in the late game, he made a lot of plays there as well. So I think that this is a match that I think Trix really wanted to win, because Zyrhoes, being that former teammate, you always want to get your revenge when they decide to leave, and you know they didn't get where they wanted to be ultimately on that Dignitas roster. And I'm sure when you stay together for 2 years and you end up having 2 disappointments in their own eyes, you tend to have a little bit of words exchange sometimes. And I imagine that probably happened, and that Dignitas now, especially Trix, wanted to really prove how good he can be with this new roster, and he's done it so far this year. Not just that game, I think Trix has played really, really well all year long. That trio of him, Qvofred, and Variety after sticking together, have continued to improve here in Season 6.
Yeah, they definitely are looking good to me. So if we talk a little bit about, I think, how well Dignitas are looking as a team, that's still the question mark for me for the Knights then on the other side. Right?
Yeah.
I think there's clearly no question about the mechanical ability and that these guys are all insane and very good at Smite. But in these late game scenarios, which is weird because that's where they like to play to, we've seen a couple times where it looks like maybe they're not all on the same page. And in the last game, I thought we saw an entirely different identity, at least from adapting in terms of how he played those late game fights.
Yes.
So I truly do wonder if everything is, if all 5 of them are on the same page when they're playing these games.
Yeah, it looked a little bit discombobulated there towards the end for sure. And like I said, towards the end and towards the throw, I think a lot of that is really adapting was playing to what their comp was designed to do, and the rest of the team didn't really get that memo.
Yeah.
But that's as much on adapting then as it is on them for being on a different page. You know what I mean? You just have to really be in perfect harmony with the rest of your teammates. You're going to beat a team that's playing as well as Dignitas is right now.
They've been playing better than everyone else, at least so far, and this is the week where I feel like they truly get to cement that, right? If they truly are the better team, we'll know at the end of this one, and so far, they've looked pretty darn good. But let's go ahead and move into the action. Game number 2, Knights up against Dig, and everything is where we expect it to be. Nothing particularly crazy here, but keep an eye on where we're going to be seeing EmilZy and Trixtank in this start. They're already leaning to the right, so I imagine they'll be over here around solo.
Only one game into this week, and it's, Jormungandr in mid lane, exactly where we expected.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. It's just crazy. Definitely not the sentence that I would have anticipated as we started today, but that's the way it's been so far. And like I said, Zyrhoes didn't impress me last game. He also didn't do horribly. He just kind of was there.
Right. Well, Hurriwind has started with this Aegis in the middle lane. Aegis.
Yeah.
Whichever. Do you like this here? I mean, there is some CC you want to try and get away from, yes, but maybe also just immuning a bunch of damage from EmilZy could save you in some of these fights. Do you like this as the first start?
Yeah, I do. You don't really want beads, but you also don't really want Aegis here. I mean, you do want Aegis for sure, but I mean, you could really go either way is the big thing. And so that's why he probably leans in towards the Aegis a little bit more, because beads might not help him quite as much as the high end will in this matchup. You want to play towards what you think you can make the most things happen with, and that's certainly Aegis.
Adapting already, stepping forward aggressively. Gets the slow on the Qvofred, a little bit of damage, but not much more than that. It is going to be the supports over in the solo lane side, though no one's playing a Circuit this time, so not a huge advantage in the clear of rhyming an assassin in this scuffle. But there's EmilZy, who takes a little bit more poke perhaps than he wanted, at least in this first trade, as every team has defended their own blue.
Upgraded Shell already for EmilZy. Remember, he didn't go Shell last game. He went for Thorns instead, but Sprint might not have to be used here by Trixtank. Indeed it will, but EmilZy has to use Shell as well, so a bit of a wash as both supports end up using their relics. I like the Sprint up against the slows from Arachne is the big thing why I think Trixtank opts for that. And the Shell obviously great against Kali.
Trixtank might be in some trouble in an early gank. He's slowed, but adapting can't afford to tank all of that. They need to catch him a little bit further outside of the range. But EmilZy takes an extra tower shot, and that might end up spelling his doom. Variety can push,
body blocks,
but can't quite get enough. Good job from Deathwalker getting in between.
Yeah, that was very close. Qvo has Blink, and a Blink 2 would certainly get the job done, but doesn't end up going for it. Instead, Qvo just hunting for farm. But adapting not getting that kill means that he triple splits half of a wave, and that's really all the farm he got for the moment. Luckily for him, Qvo didn't have a lot of farm available to him at the same time, but that's certainly time lost for adapting, where he could have probably been using that farm elsewhere.
Man, is the easiest role in the game really getting easier right now? Hunter's just left alone all the time, having fun.
I wasn't going to say that they're the easiest role, but you're right. I mean, you're not wrong.
Right. You'd stop me if I was.
I would for sure, but you're not. Look, I mean, if you're a lot better than your opponent, and you got a lot better for you, but I don't think that's the case here for Ataraxia or Vote. Neither player was able to solo the other in game 1. I think there is a little bit more solo potential this time in this lane, because you've got 2 hunters and no Kronos in that lane
rewind,
who can really reset you. Kronos just has such a threat of, if I all in him and he lives, then I'm dead, where that doesn't really happen as easily for a traditional hunter. So maybe we'll see either Vote or Ataraxia play a little bit more aggressively in this lane, but why risk it when you can just get all the free farm and wait until the later stages.
It just feels like, wouldn't this mean easier ganks for the jungle because the support's not there to peel, but we haven't seen any attention over there. Like there's a truce almost. Leave him alone.
I agree. I was surprised that Adapting didn't go over to duo lane at all in game one with Blink, especially early on. Sure, you Blink knock up, he has to rewind. He has to respect it. And now he's dead as soon as he hits the ground and off the rewind. Now on the Arachne, but Ataraxia is on a very safe character in Hachiman. How well can you chase him down through that mounted archery? Adapting probably can, but is that worth his time? I think Qvo will have a pretty tough time ganking because he's Kali and he really wants to play for late game team fights.
Sure.
If anyone's going to be ganking duo, I imagine it'll be Adapting.
Well, it's why jungle, inversely, I think, is the hardest role in the game. It's because it's so... all the decisions that you make are so important, and it's almost like this game of chicken. You know, if they're over on the solo side, kind of bullying your solo laner, stripping away their buffs, and instead you're ganking and you don't get the kill, it's just a loss for you. So maybe it really just is the lower variance play to just be over here where the other jungler is and try and keep things even, as Trixtank in some early trouble is able to get the dash off. They'll let him reposition, but Hurriwind drops his own ult, and Trixtank's low, but Zyrhoes might have something to say.
Here comes that ultimate from Jormungandr. Trixtank juking as much as he can. Zyrhoes 0 for 1, 0 for 2, and he's got to disengage with this one, so Trixtank ends up living. Didn't wait for the X-Ball ultimate to subside. That's the combo, right? Trixtank has to stop moving even for half a second in order to not get stunned by that ultimate, so that should guarantee the Jormungandr dunk, but just didn't happen.
Unfortunately, couldn't quite connect. It is somewhat, I would say, fairly jukeable, to be honest, especially in that situation where it's pretty clear he's going to be coming for you. So not the biggest surprise in the world, especially if you stay kind of close to the circle he's coming from.
Right.
The range is a little bit restricted. I think that's what you saw Trix kind of do, is just juke around near that same hole. But you're right. If you do it around the Xbalanque ults, that should eliminate a lot of that variance.
I agree. That should have been a kill for Zyrhoes. Just didn't end up happening. Though it did end up opening up a speed buff invade for Adapting. He was able to strip that away from Qvofred. And Hurriwind's ultimate there was onto Adapting. And I don't know if that was the right target. I think EmilZy had already used belly flop, and he was pretty healthy still. But maybe with focus fire from Argus and from Kali, that might have been enough to bring him down. The reality is that Trix just got low off that failed gank on that right-hand side and forced him to back early on, which means he was only level 3 and much more susceptible to getting killed than EmilZy. Even sitting at level 4, you've got a lot more health and protection as a Guardian. That you get your protections and health per level are definitely relevant as a Guardian, even in the early game.
Well, an early gank from the Knights doesn't quite net them a kill, and you can stop me if it sounds like my exact descriptions from the early game of game number 1. The Knights trying to find some kind of attempts, and Dignitas answering. The only difference is this time they didn't get a response kill, though they do find a 2-man stun from Trix, who continues to play quite well on the Terra, somehow making out of that last engagement alive and now finding some nice stuns, but there won't be much more follow-up from that.
Qvo just without a speed buff in that position. I think if Qvo has speed and has a little bit, if he's got Mace 2 from that position, then there's no way he has it this early in the game, I suppose. Then I think that's an all-in commit, but Trixtank's dash was already down, so he couldn't close the gap in range to get a Terra's Blessing off, which could have led to a good knockup from Hurriwind. If that happens 4 minutes from now, Dignitas might get a double kill in that position, but it's still early enough in the game, and Hurriwind doesn't have boots. He can't close that gap either. Just enough safety there for Pittsburgh Knights to get away with getting double stunned.
Zyrhoes able to find some nice clear, but they fall back. The solo lane matchup has kind of become this meta top-end matchup, right? It's Achilles and Bellona. These two, with King Arthur banned out, are considered some of the strongest ones you can have over there. So we'll see who can have the bigger impact once they rotate. But we might not even have to wait for that to see the impact. Ulted from Hurriwind just onto Adapting. No one else around. He's just letting them fly.
Yeah, I thought, I guess Hurriwind thinks that was a good opportunity, but the rest of Dignitas not on the same page there. And Hera's ult is a huge portion of her relevancy as a character, honestly. I mean, when you don't have ultimate as Hera, you feel pretty weak. And so Hurriwind still has Argus for a little bit longer, but not enough to really threaten the Pittsburgh Knights. Maybe enough to get these mid-camps, but even that doesn't seem to be the case.
Trixtank can at least try and strip them away and ends up grabbing them, so hey, maybe that was the play. If mid-harpies are worth having, then he got them.
If this were Season 2, Dignitas would have just won the game.
Right? That's right.
Because they got 3 out of 4 mid-harpies. They stole 1 on the left and got both on right. The game is now over in your favor.
You just can't catch up. Not at this point.
Thank God we're not.
Yeah. Oh, no. Season 2 was the best season of Smite
go
we've
ahead.
ever had.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, there's never been one that's more competitive, never one that's more exciting to watch.
Right,
Yeah.
right. God diversity was huge.
Yes,
for sure.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was really great.
Yes.
It was good, sure. It was just season 6 and season 5 and
Listen, that was personally for me as a fan when I was enjoying it. So that's all I need. That's all I need.
I suppose you're right, Finch.
Golden Blade there for adapting, doing as I mentioned before the game. You know, his favorite start, likely stone cutting or the like will be coming through next, and not boots, as he hasn't bothered for it. Maybe even hastened. He's got some options. Just probably won't be boots. There's too many legs anyway for him to put boots on all of them. So.
Yeah, it's not efficient. I mean, where do you put them? Do you put them on the middle legs or the back legs if you only have 2 shoes?
It's got to be the back legs because the front legs are like arms, basically.
I feel like it's the middle legs.
They do the most walking, I guess.
Right, like they've got the most traction. Like you're getting the most value out of it that way, I think.
I think that could be right. You know what? You just sold me on it.
Cool.
I'll put him on the middle leg. That
Excellent.
easy. Yeah.
But adapting won't need to because he's putting swords in each of those hands / legs. And he could, like you said, he could go hastened here, could go stone cutting. The reason that he's able to get away with this is because, number one, the katanas have an absurd amount of movement speed, so
yes.
you can keep up with your opponents anyways. But also because he gets so much movement speed while on the web.
That's a ton of damage Trixtank's way, but he's already out. Argus, even though it was used liberally, is right back up when they need it. And Qvofred gets the kill. That's Hurriwind's damage. And the bait from Trixtank, though, that sets that up.
Beautifully done there by Dignitas. And also the polymorph from Hurriwind, critical in securing that kill. Because, again, adapting goes blink instead of beads. And just didn't respect the damage coming from Hurriwind in that position. Yes, I understand Qvo blinks in, but as soon as you get polymorph, you're in danger of dying from that position. I think you have to expect Hurriwind to hit the polymorph and use Nightcrawler defensively. It just feels like, to me, I mean, adapting's kind of been a little bit disrespectful about what Hurriwind's been able to do so far.
Sure.
He doesn't expect him to Aegis in that last team fight, and it ends up dying for it. There, he doesn't respect the polymorph's going to hit him and ends up getting CC chained into death. And Dignitas has punished him accordingly.
There certainly could be something there. Though adapting so far has been, like you said, getting punished for it. And it's been to the favor of Dignitas. They're looking good throughout this early game. And yet again, it's kind of in a responsive position where Knights are the ones aggressing and they can't complete their gank attempt or their kill attempts that they're looking for. Dignitas, a large part, have kind of just been able to just answer when the Knights try something. They haven't even really had to do too much on their own. As EmilZy lands a nice flop, Hurriwind takes a bunch of damage. That's Aegis out early, and over the top comes Zyrhoes.
But he's not going to have enough damage to finish him from this position. Divine Shroud does enough, and that's a blink from adapting. You got Aegis out from Hurriwind as well, but still 3 ultimates actually from Pittsburgh Knights, all committed to try and kill Hurriwind, and he's still standing.
Well, Aegis is certainly looking like the better relic right now.
Yes.
It helped him out a lot in that engagement, so Hurriwind certainly recognizing what that he needs to make it back out of there. That health shield, though, certainly doesn't hurt either for him to make sure he's able to get out of there as well. So far, I've been impressed with Hurriwind. I don't just mean today. I mean just in Season 6. For me, he was kind of that question mark for Dignitas, and maybe a reason why some of us are a little bit more down on the team than we should have been is he going to be able to rise up to that level? And I think he's done more than play his role. He's played really well for this team.
He really has, and so is the rest of Dignitas, to be fair, but
sure.
Hurriwind has definitely done more than a role player. Variety trying to 1v2 adapting, and he nearly gets him. Qvofred puts himself in combat so he can't blink. Now comes the ultimate from Vote. Very patient on that option, and Deathwalker should be okay. So has Fatal Strike, but Vote does have to use that ultimate. Man, that was close for adapting, though. Variety just no chill on this Bologna.
Not at all, and I think really, as nice as the kill would have been, they did enough damage. It's the TKO, as Tolly likes to say. Adapting had to go back, and he's already experiencing some of that he's behind. He's only just now ticked over level 10 behind Qvofred, who's level 11. So certainly enough still done, I think, from Dig there, even without completing the kill.
Qvo has just always seemed to step up his game when going up against adapting.
Yeah.
Specifically in regular season play. I think that you could make the argument that Qvo is the greatest regular season jungler of all time. I think that you could probably convince me that there's an argument to be made there. I don't know if I'd agree with you, but he's certainly in that conversation. It's just a matter of he doesn't have the rings that adapting has, ultimately. It's Variety up and over that Fatal Strike, and if that stun would have landed, I think he kills Deathwalker from that position, but survival first, safety first, for variety. But it's no surprise to me that Qvofred's played really well this set. He always steps up against adapting, and in whatever team he's on, he really likes the challenge, it seems.
Yeah, he's always in that conversation, right? It feels like where we're like, well, adapting's the best player in the world, and then Qvofred's right there next to him, and you wonder how much of that is a bit of a chip on his shoulder, because what more does he have to do? I think that the best online team of the last 2 years was Dignitas full stop, rival, much like you said with adapting past them when you factor in those LAN performances, I think. But they were so good online. It was always a surprise when they didn't get first at LANs. Even at LANs, they got like second a lot. It was just that the bar was so high for them that it felt like failure if they got anything less than first. So I think Qvofred has done everything you could want from him. He's clearly elite.
Yes, I mean, if you're not classing Qvofred as one of the best players in the world, regardless of if he is the best, then you have not been paying attention to the Smite Pro League. There is no doubt that this man is as world class as it gets in his role. It's incredible what he's done.
Another bit of a skirmish here happening in the jungle, but there won't be much from it. It hasn't been as much pressure on these solo lane sides as what you'd expect, even though we did see Variety walking down adapting. That hardly felt like a gank, right? That felt like Variety was the one in control of that situation. So it has been slightly different from what we saw in Game 2, a lot more focus around sticking around these mid laners. And I think it's because Knights were hoping they'd have some kill potential in Hurriwind, but it has not been there for the most part.
And he's already working towards what will probably be a Book of the Dead to just give him that extra degree of safety in this mid lane. He's already got his Book of Thoth completed. It's going to end up being a ton of power. It does mean that he's lacking penetration in the early game, as is Qvo, though Qvo has Crusher, so I guess it's better than I thought. I just saw the Hasten Katana. So you've got enough pen coming out of Qvo that just damage outright from Hurriwind might be enough to net you kills, but Hurriwind's DPS is going to be relevant as long as he's staying alive, and that's what this next item is going to do for him. It could be Soul Reaver in response to that early Gauntlet of Thebes coming from EmilZy, but I think that's a mistake if that's the way he goes. Though I guess, I don't know. Deathwalker has Blackthorn Hammer. You could go Soul Reaver or Book of the Dead from here. If I'm Hurriwind, I just want to live. So I'm going Book of the Dead.
And that will be the one that'll keep him alive more often than not, though. So I imagine that'll be the path that we'll see him go.
Wow, he actually goes Shell instead of Beads. I was just saying, you don't really need Beads that much against this composition. As long as you're not getting stunned by Deathwalker, what do you really need it for? I mean, you could pre-Beads the Flop, you could Beads the Belch, but that's about it.
Maybe like get away from the slow, from adapting to, or from getting stunned. Yeah.
I was thinking maybe he goes Sprint instead of Beads. But you already have Sprint for Trixtank. Now this means that he's got Absorb stacks up against adapting, which is huge.
You're right, it's
Absorbs his one. I actually really like this call from Hurriwind. And he's always been one, kind of like Captain Twig in the jungle. Hurry will get a team relic and kind of sacrifice of his own personal survivability for his team. He's done it in the past, and I think there's a great option for him here. And I wonder what this opens up Trixtank to get at level 12. I'd imagine it's going to be Blink, for him to Blink engage with that Earth and Fury, and really let him hit it on the entirety of Pittsburgh Knights, and let Hurriwind still have that shell that he will desperately need this game.
Well, the rest of the Hunter side of the map, though, has been all quiet. It's favored a little bit towards Vote, just in terms of XP. He's a little bit ahead of where Ataraxia is. Isn't that insane, man? I'm telling you, it's like a cushy time to be a Hunter.
And now it's too late for any of these junglers to go over, because you're looking at a 5-level deficit.
Well, they never did, even a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. We saw this before, and it just ended up being very strong because Hunter's late game was so powerful that you just wanted to get them there as early as possible. And it worked really, really well for you. And these are two pretty good late-game Hunters as well.
Yes.
But I'm not convinced that either jungler was incapable of coming over and shutting this down early on. You can maybe make the argument that it's not worth their time, but I don't know if I buy that either. I think that it just so happened that both these teams ended up playing the map this way. I don't know that this is going to become a common strategy throughout the league, that Hunters are just left alone without any sort of pressure.
It really is wild, man, how much time they've been given. And Xbalanque in particular is one you really don't want to gift that time over to, because I think if there is a point where there is some vulnerability for Xbalanque, it would be early. And still, they couldn't quite find him. They show some pressure on this gold free, but that's not a real attempt to lock that down. This is a real attempt on EmilZy's life, though, as he has been stunned. but the Xbalanque ultimate, that's more than enough to slow down that push.
Good patience there from Hurriwind. Doesn't use Argus, so now Vote doesn't have his ultimate. Variety gonna go right on top of him with that Eagles rally and force back the level 19 Hunter.
That's right, who outclasses him in terms of levels. Polymorph comes through, and Zyrhoes takes so much damage, but does make it, though, into that ultimate, so he's out of there. But now the rest of Dignitas can come right back to the gold crew. This has been so patient and clinical, and it nets them the objective.
Deathwalker still has his ultimate, so he should be safe, but these walls are doing a great job of putting him in a bad spot. Body blocked perfectly, and the Earthed Fury comes out as well just to make sure, but Deathwalker still nearly escaped.
He does enough, though. It takes so long for them to eventually kill him that now Qvofred is low, but Adapting can't get in there to punish him, so it's still a win for Dignitas so far, but now Variety in trouble. Vote finds that kill. EmilZy takes quite a bit of damage as well, but no one from Dig looks like they want to push forward, but at least getting a 1 kill in return, that's better than what I thought they were going to get.
It's solo laner for solo laner, so basically a wash, though Dignitas had invested so much into getting that solo laner, and Vote is back and healthy with relics up, that Pyromancer should be favored here for the Pittsburgh Knights. Zyrhoes playing aggressively, goes up. Pyro goes the way of PK, but it was close. Thought Ataraxia may have threaded the needle.
Yeah, he was close
On that auto attack. I was praising Hurriwind's patience on not ulting EmilZy, but I think that the stunt onto Zyrhoes put him in such a... You know that his stealth was down. I think that was a great opportunity for Hurriwind to drop the ultimate, blow up Zyrhoes, who ended up living with a sliver of HP.
Right.
And knock up Adapting, who was right next to him. I think that could have been a little bit cleaner from Dignitas. Hurry, really patient on one end, and then a little bit, I would say, gun-shy.
Hello. What's all this then? Considering the Fire Giant, but all of the Knights are here, so you won't be able to sneak this one away in the dead of the night. Now it's time for the World Serpent to come dunking in. Hurriwind and Ataraxia, the carries are way too low, and Zyrhoes gonna keep pushing forward. Deathwalker finds the execute, and the Knights are not gonna go to bed quietly. In fact, they're dead even in this game, and they want to find a lead.
Deathwalker pretty far forward, but still okay. Polymorph off the mark from Hurriwind, who's only level 14, so no pen for him either. Not really a chance for him to actually deal relevant damage to this level 18 solo laner. I don't like that call from Dignitas. It's really, really risky. And then Ataraxia, that's what the Jormungandr mid is designed to do. How is he ever supposed to disengage from that fight? I mean, he's getting hit. If he just runs the way he's supposed to, he's going to get knocked up and take a lot of damage. He's got nowhere to disengage. And it let Vote get that tier 2 tower on the left-hand side. That was a bad pull from Dignitas.
I agree, and maybe they expected for Knights to have fallen back much harder than they did, but they had 2 members that were certainly nearby. They just didn't have the information that it was a gamble, right? A lot of the times they'll make those plays, and they'll have had some piece of information where you're like, okay, that's what it was. I made them feel so confident. But that one really did feel a bit like just a toss-up, and they weren't able to disengage cleanly enough, as you said, because of the Jormungandr. Now with the tier 2 tower, Knights have an actual lead here. They're up almost 5,000 gold. The experience is a real problem. It was near 8,000 in their favor. Everyone about a level or 2 behind. So right now the Knights looking good.
The experience seems a little bit misleading to me, though, just because these Hunters sat in lane for so long. And Vote has so much XP, and now it's irrelevant to him because he's already level 20. So his XP is not getting any bigger, and I think that's where a lot of that XP lead is. But in the mid lane in particular, it is certainly helping out as good poke from Zyrhoes. And that's what Jormungandr can bring, is that long-range poke that's pretty much unavoidable and also leaves that deployable on the ground that makes it hard to retreat from this position.
But Dignitas making a firm stand on this tier 1 tower. It's not as if the Knights have enough to where Dignitas just start giving stuff up, but again, these aren't hugely valuable 22 minutes in, but they don't want to give up anything and let the Knights find any free wins as Adapting is away from the rest of the squad farming up. Remember, he's staring at a level 20 Hunter, or 19 for Ataraxia, so he's got to build himself up too, as the ultimate from Hurriwind is forced out.
Level 19 still for Deathwalker, and Hurry doesn't start building into pen. He's going to go for Soul Reaver from this position. Again, it's a lot more power because you end up with that extra mana that Soul Reaver provides on top of the actual magical power. You're converting 9% of that mana that you're getting from items. So he's got a lot of outright power from this position, and I think he feels comfortable going without pen because there isn't a lot of magical defense on either side for Pittsburgh Knights, but there's enough where now, I mean, Deathwalker just has enough natural procs from being level 19 and finishing off the runic shield where Hurriwind just can't really deal relevant damage to him at this position. And there's no way that he's hitting Zyrhoes or Vote consistently in these team fights. And even Zyrhoes has natural Guardian procs, so he's going to be fairly tanky to Hurriwind, who has no pen. I don't know. The Soul Reaver is really good here because you've got Blackthorn Hammer for Deathwalker. You've got natural HP Guardian scaling in the mid lane for Zyrhoes. You've got Gauntlet of Thieves and Guardian health scaling for EmilZy. But he needs Pen pretty desperately from here.
Well, this is a big turnaround for the Knights compared to game number 2 for me. And really, it's hard to, aside from that Fire Giant, to point out a moment where they really made a big play. And what they really just did was stay relevant despite the early game from Dignitas being strong. They were able to stay virtually even with the Gold Fury going down. So now that they're able to catch Dignitas making a mistake, they can capitalize on it quite well. They're pulling the Oni Fury, and Zyrhoes is lurking underneath the ground if they even know where he is, but he only knocks up Variety. But this whole time, the Oni Fury being burned.
Deathwalker's taken no damage either on that top side. He's able to zone, deal relevant damage to Trix and Ataraxia, and take absolutely no damage, and got Purification Beads, actually, from Ataraxia, and Shell from Trixtank. I also don't know where Adapting went to get all this farm, but he was down a couple levels to Qvofred, and now he's up to level 19. Qvo just now hitting level 18.
I agree.
Doug helping us out, saying he pushed that right-hand side in quite a bit. He must have, because he all of a sudden, he's got a ton of farm.
That's right. He was just kind of chilling over there, especially during that mid-tower siege. I think that's what opened it up. They kept them, Dignitas, locked under the tier 1, defending that, and Adapting took that time to go off and get caught up in terms of farm. Pyromancer will go down, but Variety says that will not be the end of it. Vote is in some trouble, has the Rising Jaguar and disengages, and Adapting actually stuns out Variety. Now he's in some trouble. The belly flop keeps the CC chain going, so does the stun, but Argus comes through as well. But here's Qvofred on the backside. He found Vote, an important kill for Dig.
And Zyrhoes has to use his ultimate defensively as well. Trix is low on mana. Zyrhoes wants to re-engage, is Adapting chasing down Qvofred in the mid lane. To blink in from EmilZy. They really want this kill onto Qvo.
But someone needs to come back and try and get some of this damage off Zyrhoes. There just isn't enough help. Ataraxia brings him down, so they have to get Qvofred at least, because this is what they spent their time doing instead, and he can't quite get it, just out of range of those webs, and that means Dignitas, yet again, find another good fight.
They got beads out from Qvofred, but not even the ultimate from him, and that's an absolute win for Dignitas. I mean, they get Zyrhoes down, and really some much-needed farm for Hurriwind now, as there's a little bit of a lull in the action for at least a little bit of time. They do have to worry about these Oni waves. Looks like there's a big one grouping on that left-hand side as well as here in right, but Variety's got this one, Ataraxia's got the one in left, and we'll share that with Hurriwind, who again desperately needs some farm. But he's finished off Soul Reaver finally, and again, there's still a Kali that you have to worry about.
Yes.
Your Pittsburgh Knights. There is a ticking time bomb that's going to give you the boom boom sauce at some point. So you got to be worried about it.
It's certainly something that you got to make sure that you're prepared for, not something you can go into ill-advised and end up having a bad night. So we'll see if they can make their way out of that one. Dignitas, though, holding on to some relevancy here in this game, despite the fact that they made that errant call on the FG earlier on in the game. And that's what really kind of gave the Knights this breathing room where they are able to have a bit of a nice lead. But what happened to Hurriwind? How did he end up so behind Zyrhoes? Was it just all this pressure? Was it splitting all the farm? What hurt him?
Yeah, he split a lot more than Zyrhoes did in the mid lane. Qvo was definitely taking a lot of waves from him in mid. And that's okay because it's Kali and you just want to get her out of the early game as quickly as possible. But it was also that Fire Giant fight where Hurriwind's kind of sticking around, not getting actual farm, trying to DPS the objective, then they get chased out, then he's sitting under tier 2. Zyrhoes is able to force them out and then immediately go back and get farm, and the fact that he was already a little bit ahead because of the splitting kind of compounded the issue pretty quickly for Dignitas' mid laner.
Knights are the ones with the control around this Fire Giant pit as we approach 27 minutes. Dignitas, no, they can't allow this one to go down for free, so they're nearby, but they're sticking mostly to tier 2. EmilZy can't knock up Trixtank. That saved him from being first blooded earlier on while those walls or pillars are out. And Qvofred looking for the loop.
Looks like someone may have the idea that he's there, though. No ward spots him out. That's Sentry'd. I love the way that Qvo's played this game so patiently, and he did it the same way in that last game 1, where he ended up coming in and cleaning up with a beautiful Fear No Evil. He's going to make himself relevant still. Keep getting farm. You know, he can get to that fight pretty quickly on the right-hand side while still putting pressure on this side jungle. I think he's been playing this very intelligently.
Oh, he wants this red buff, does Qvo. It's one thing to steal it. It's another thing to pick it up. And so now he's got a lot of extra damage coming his way. He must want to come in and fight this next time. Deathwalker again able to frontline without taking too much damage. And it's Ataraxia who's low, way in the backline, needs some help. And EmilZy chasing to the ends of the earth and can't quite find it. But Deathwalker's right behind him. That means that the backline can't punish EmilZy.
No, just not enough damage. And again, no pen from Hurriwind means that EmilZy doesn't really have to respect that damage from Hera too much.
Qvofred knows where adapting is at. It's stripping away the speed, though Qvofred, joke's on you, couldn't have picked it up anyway. Deathwalker now in some trouble. He's been locked down by Trixtank and Variety, but without much damage there's no threat. Though I'm not sure if Zyrhoes realized that's his ultimate now on cooldown.
Man, that legendary skin looks sweet in the world server, doesn't it? You got the glowing golden mouth as he's flying around. Yorm's just so cool, man.
He is very cool, I agree.
But you're right, that was a bit of a wasted ultimate for him in that position. And Ataraxia had to use his ultimate defensively. There's tons of blinks on top of him from Deathwalker and from EmilZy, really focusing out the Hunter, who's been getting all this farm. He's level 20, Hurriwind only level 18. Chin size, Titan's Bane all done. Ataraxia is full build at this point. Hurriwind has 4 items. So it's a little bit of a harken back to Season 3, except in the mid lane you don't have the, oh, I'm a character anyways item, which is the old Rod of Tahuti.
That's right. Well, it's really interesting, isn't it? I was wondering if there's a chance that Hunters even hit critical mass too early with the way this start goes. It's like, because you can't even capitalize on it as much, or we certainly don't see teams playing to it. I mean, he is still very much ahead of Hurriwind and some of the other characters in the game, so he's still feeling all this time. But it's not as if as soon as these Hunters are done, they're rotating them around and doing stuff with them.
No, I feel like this strategy is best when crit is in the meta.
Right.
Because you just get to pop everybody that's in front of you that's behind. And that just doesn't happen as much with the pen build. I mean, you still pop for sure, but it's not that explosive crit nature. So I don't disagree with you. I mean, here's my thing. Hunter items are already so much cheaper than mid laner
yes.
items. Why are you pulling gold from the lane that needs it the most of the time? You could be sharing it with the role that's designed to be sharing their gold for.
Pyromancer goes down in favor of the Knights, and this time they will at least consider starting up the enhanced Fire Giant. And still no beats for Ataraxia for a little while, so I expect he'll be playing quite safe in the backline, but already pressured and forced to leave. Ultimate comes out from Hurriwind as well. That brings EmilZy down quite low, but it's Zyrhoes' time. He goes up into the ultimate and comes dunking down. That's going to interrupt Variety, who was looking to get a kill and set up the XQ for Deathwalker. Very well played.
Really nicely done. Now another XQ, but this one defensively as Qvofred starts getting involved in the team fight. Variety just plays very aggressively and gets shredded by Vote with this full build. Ends up being enough to bring him down pretty quickly. Not a lot of HP at all for Variety in the build. For him, it's a lot of outright protection. Shogun's Kasari, High the Nemean Lion. These are all prot items, not HP and prot items. And so he ended up dying pretty quickly in that team fight. I wonder if he's going to ultimately sell that Frostbound Hammer, though it's so good up against gods like Jormungandr who don't have an inherent escape. I mean, if he gets on top of Zyrhoes, how does he ever get away?
Be difficult for him, but the Knights now considering another Fire Giant. Qvofred has been pushed away by Deathwalker, though at this point it looks like Deathwalker is now the one who's in some trouble. Qvofred, happy to take it, has to drop down the ultimate to buy himself some time, and he will eventually get his kill. Hurriwind comes through as well, but adapting finally punishes him on the back end. But all of a sudden, this is Dignitas' fight. They've gotten 3 for 1, and then Zyrhoes and EmilZy who are running away.
Well, Vote just suicided into Ataraxia, who was half health, and Vote dashed into him, and Nate just kind of stood his ground and said, thank you very much, I'll be taking that. Great bait from Qvofred, and Destruction gets the job done to save his life. And this should be an enhanced Fire Giant, though Zyrhoes has the ultimate available. He's still not going to get in there and contest. Kind of surprised about that. That's one of the reasons why his ult's so good. He can't do anything to hurt him.
Well, I thought they were slowing down here from him, but they can't wait 20 seconds to get this, so they are just going to burning it all the way through. No way they can afford to wait on when Qvofred's coming back up. But, I mean, that one was questionable decision after questionable decision for me with the Knights. Why is Deathwalker taking that trade for so long?
Well, against a lot of characters, you use all your buttons, you put them to 25% health, and you go, ha, now you can't fight me. And Kali goes, oh, that's all of your buttons, right? Like, you don't have any left. Your ultimate's still down from the right-hand side. Sure, yeah, well, I'll take this. And that's just good identification from Qvofred. I mean, you see it from less experienced players all the time.
Yes.
They get hit by all the buttons, and they say, oh, well, I'm scared, I'm really low HP, but they've got nothing left to hit you with. So Qvo just takes that opportunity and starts going in, and the rest of Pittsburgh Knights trying to come in and bail out Deathwalker from his bad decision-making. But Qvo's already got the ultimate. He nearly ended up getting killed because Zyrhoes had a perfectly timed knock-up that nearly ended up getting him before he could get the ultimate off, and ended up just not being enough in time. Qvo got off Destruction, and letting Kali have a couple seconds without threat of death is a pretty easy way for her to win a team fight.
And this is that threat that was always looming for Pittsburgh Knights. Was Qvofred on this Kali, and the game ticking later and later, and her getting more and more able to stand toe-to-toe with just about anybody on the map. Now it's Dignitas and the Enhanced FG that have some towers to go push down and close in this gold gap. It's already significantly closed. What was once 5,000 is now virtually even. Experience, for what it's worth, has been normalized as well, though at 33 minutes, not a ton. But the Knights aren't willing to give up. Deathwalker goes in and gets shredded for the trouble. Ataraxia burns him. EmilZy in trouble as well. And so Variety says hello and joins the fray. Zyrhoes just barely makes it the ultimate, even goes back in a couple times because he can always leave with those last couple of charges. But this is all Dignitas, top to bottom.
Hey, Finch, is Pen good for killing tanks, you think?
Yes, it's the best way, really.
You know, like all these fights where Deathwalker and EmilZy are blinking in on top of Ataraxia and then they walk away without any threat, it's because there was no Pen in the mid lane. This time Hurriwind has Obsidian Shard, and they get insta-killed for going in on and focusing too much on Ataraxia. It was just a matter of time until that started happening. It just happened to take until now.
Whoa, I wonder if this is the absolute end of the game. They know adapting isn't here, so they have the 5v2 in their favor, or 4v2 rather, as Qvofred's not here either. Variety takes quite a bit of damage. Hurriwind, though, does get zeros, but this isn't about the Titan. It's still plenty healthy. They were just doing damage under the fight. And Pittsburgh Knights not just push them away, but they might even have some potential for a couple kills. But the re-engage from Variety locks down Vote. Hurriwind gets the kill, though they still can't end just yet.
No, and they don't have enough to get Phoenixes from this position either, I don't think. No blink for adapting, so Hurriwind should be okay from this position, but good bait from adapting onto his own teammate there. He's really thinking about going in. Do I want it? Do I not? And then a wall and an ultimate from Variety just punished Vote instantly because he had no purification beads.
Man, I mean, 5 to 6,000 gold, that's not a death sentence or anything like that, but the Knights were up in this game. Dignitas gifted them a lead with that Fire Giant pull that didn't quite pan out for him, right?
Yeah.
And the Knights just could not hold on to it. All of a sudden now it's Dignitas who are back in control. They've got the left side Phoenix down and fire minions now on the minds of Knights that they have to worry about. They're the ones in the driver's seat with a late game Kali.
That's a good spot to be in, for sure. I mean,
yeah, ain't it good?
you're racing, but you've got the sports car, and they don't. You know, that's the kind of the position that Dignitas is in. Doesn't mean they couldn't blow a tire from this position, but certainly in the lead. And by the way, Variety, the scoreline not super sexy at 1, 2, and 5, but he has played really, really well on this Bologna. Yes. He has been a nightmare for the Pittsburgh Knights to deal with in every single team fight. Vote has been smothered in these fights. Take a look at the player damage. Remember, a lot of this is just in the late game because the early game, there's really no fighting in that lane. Ataraxia has been able to rack up quite a bit because Dignitas has been able to peel for him now when Pittsburgh Knights' front line is jumping on top of him. And in that last fight in particular, he did a ton, whereas Vote has not been able to get that same amount of protection and help and has really been punished because of it.
Adapting, trying to force something to happen on the right-hand side. Doesn't find much of anything. He has to leave. That's his ultimate now on cooldown, and Dignitas should, of course, be able to come grab the tier 2 in right. Pittsburgh Knights will now have to make their stand on the Phoenix, and that'll be without the Nightcrawler.
And another good game from Trixtank as well. 0, and 9. Has only not assisted in 2 kills so far this game. Has consistently found really good stuns. The nice body block on the left-hand mid-harpies. Dignitas is just a team that is really damn good at Smite.
Yeah, that's really it. There's not. It's harder. It feels like to get much more analysis than that, but they really do play so well as a team. And the word that I really want to use with them is patience. They really do pick their spots, it feels like. And a lot of that, I think, is Qvofred and Trixtank. And that's what set them up now to pull in this FG. Deathwalker takes damage over the wall, and it's EmilZy who blinks in. Argus has already joined us in the fray, but now comes Zyrhoes over the top. The World Serpent would like to be a part of this one as well. Hurriwind is the one that's taking a bunch of damage, and there's no way to peel it. Zyrhoes takes Hurriwind out of that fight. Get out of here, Hera.
Little Damian Lillard impersonation. A little step back shot from way downtown ends up taking out Hurriwind. And that's what Jormungandr mid is supposed to do to you.
Right.
Just what is Hurriwind ever supposed to do? Oh, he's supposed to use Aegis, by the way. Yeah, that's what he's supposed to do. Okay, never mind. Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. Use Aegis at any point. That seems pretty good.
Yes. I think that last shot would be very difficult because he's like so far away you probably don't expect it. But any of the times that there's a giant like snake folding in on you, yeah probably somewhere in there.
Yeah, we'll take one of those, please. Even that was through the Book of the Dead proc as well. Oh, no,
Yeah.
that probably has been on cooldown for a little bit, 45 seconds, 90-second proc. But still, I mean, that's what the last composition was designed to do, was dive really well. And EmilZy goes Blink this game, which just really wants to keep it up, and was just able to get on top of Hurriwind and Ataraxia pretty easily. It's such a difficult balance as backliners to stand close enough, because a lot of times you are peeling for one another as backliners.
Right.
And that's why certain gods are really, really good, because they have inherent CC in their kits, and it's not to set themselves up, it's to help peel for their teammates. But you can't stand so close together that you're getting hit by the same Blink Intoxicate. And that's really, really difficult to do. It's just a balance that every new mid ADC kind of needs to find, and I think that's an undervalued pairing on teams, or how well the mid and ADC end up working together.
Right, and it's one that you don't talk a lot about because we haven't had quite a late game meta for a while, but a lot of our games now have been going later. And so that balance, I think, is even more important now when you're having these skirmishes and the back line's trying to find these ways to jump past the front line and get back there and harass you around these Fire Giant pits. So I think you're right to highlight how important that is. As Pittsburgh Knights are in here, they're ready to start battling. In fact, Adapting might have found himself a target, but no, it's Qvofred who's hunting, but he's got to run away from EmilZy, who comes in for the flop.
I love Qvofred just like walking him down. There's no blink, no jump, nothing. Just, I'm coming, man. You got to do something.
Well, Deathwalker's in there, and EmilZy's right there to
walls.
follow, but what a good polymorph coming through from Hurriwind. That shuts everything down. Zyrhoes comes in right over the top, and he's got plenty of damage and disruption. Dignitas can't respond. Ataraxia finds one, but Zyrhoes right there and behind. Variety gets Zyrhoes two in
baby.
trade, so it's 2 for 1 so far.
Qvo was in execute range right after that destruction,
Man,
but Variety's Thorns gets it done, shuts down Vote. And you called it, Finch. A great polymorph coming from Hurriwind, but also those walls from Trixtank
Yes.
just dissect the team fight perfectly and do a good job of body blocking and end up stunning the opposition. Another great fight from Trix, and that peel ends up being enough. And EmilZy just decided he didn't want to live anymore.
Very curious about what that was all about. Maybe he thought everyone was on the FG. He had a chance to like proxy farm some, push the waves further out, so they would have minions to come push within, right? Maybe that's the idea, and just wasn't sure, didn't know the Kali was there.
Yes, and maybe I'm also 6'7" now.
Yeah, you aren't.
I haven't stood up in a while, and I may have grown since the last time I stood up.
You could have grown, I suppose.
That's right.
I guess that's possible.
Those are about equally good ideas.
Deathwalker's the only one up right now, but Adapting and Zyrhoes should be here soon.
And that's a huge kill, Finch, because EmilZy's dead for 30 seconds still.
So long. It's
I mean,
staggered,
if you have him up right now, it's a 4-on-5. Instead, you've got a 3-on-5, and you've got no hope at defending at least one Phoenix, maybe even 2 if Dignitas really want to push it. Though with the relics down, they might err on the side of caution. That seems to be the call. But I don't know that they necessarily get that Phoenix with no contest whatsoever if EmilZy's up.
These last few fights, Ryan, we've seen Pittsburgh Knights kind of blink past the front line to try and get towards Hurriwind and Ataraxia, and I think also to try and get away from where this Argus is dropping to. That certainly doesn't hurt, and sort of be past that extra presence. But this fight, man, that's where they shut that down. Like you said, the wall from Trixtank was so good, so was the polymorph from Hurriwind, and that's what really turned everything around. They're not going to be able, I don't think, to keep doing this counter initiation. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep getting back there to Hurriwind and Ataraxia. Is that blink past going to be what's going to keep working for the Knights?
I mean, they seem to be sticking to it, and there's something to be said. I say it a lot about picks and bans, but it's even relevant here, where when you've been practicing 1 or 2 things in lead up for this match, if it isn't working, sometimes you just got to stick it out, because it's better than swapping to something that you haven't been working on a lot.
Right.
But it doesn't seem to be working for Pittsburgh Knights so far. And it was working in the early game, and that's kind of where Pittsburgh Knights have gotten trapped in that, oh, well, it's working this game, but it really was only working because Hurriwind was so far behind and had no pen. And now that he has pen and is level 20 and in 6 items, you're having such a hard time actually withstanding the damage from Ataraxia and Hurriwind simultaneously.
What's the percentage chance you can fight Variety now that he has the Zik vial if you're a hunter?
Oh my god, it's 0. You have 0 shot.
There's no hope, is there? Like,
no,
good
man.
lord.
He's stealing your attack speed. He has 70 power all of a sudden.
Right.
I mean, oh, good lord.
Yeah, poor Vote, man. He's going to need to find somewhere else to be. Adapting too, man. There's just no chance they're going to be able to get up there and trade up against this Bologna, it feels like. And now it's time to find a way to force open this base if you're a Dignitas fan. Knights need to hold on. If they can find a big wipe here, they can definitely still push themselves.
Left side Phoenix already down to about a third. Blink in from Deathwalker. This time he only hits on the Trixtank. And Hurriwind Ataraxia that time, you see how spread they are? They're hugging opposite walls. That's perfect. Deathwalker has to make a choice on who he's going for. And so did EmilZy if he wanted to blink in afterwards.
Adapting has been working with Zyrhoes to keep this mid Phoenix up as Qvo and Variety are there. It's a 3-2 split from Dignitas to try and break open this base. Zyrhoes lurking underneath. They don't know quite where he is, but Variety doesn't care. He jumps right in and lands down with the Eagles rally. But at the exact same time, the left-hand side, Pittsburgh Knights engage, and it's EmilZy who ends up low. Mid-Phoenix down, and with EmilZy low, Dignitas can push in on the left-hand side as well.
So they don't get enough of damage on the Phoenix quite yet. Mid-Phoenix already down. Deathwalker is going to try and frontline, but is getting absolutely eaten alive by Ataraxia. Left side Phoenix, the only one still standing for Pittsburgh Knights.
Yeah, you can hear those Odibo procs ringing out, man. That's just too much damage coming through. Silver Branch there for Ataraxia as well. Not always the hugest fan of it, but with that banner, he'll have plenty of attack speed to get some extra damage. EmilZy goes in, but the immediate response is there. Hurriwind gets the credit. Adapting follows up, at least finds Ataraxia, but Qvofred punishes him. But Variety, if he gets executed, that's a big win for the Knights. It's 2 for 2.
Wow, Qvo just plays very safe that fight and still has his ultimate available, but doesn't decide to go in. And I wonder if Dignitas needs to play you've been preaching their patience, and they've definitely been doing that very well. But I wonder if that's where you want to get a little bit greedy.
Sure.
From this position. Especially, Ataraxia puts himself in flop range, in my mind, intentionally, knowing that that's what's going to happen to him. He's going to get flopped on. He pre-beads it, and the design is that he's going to kill EmilZy for jumping on him. And they do that very well. Adapting gets in there and somehow manages to find the autos in between all that. That's pretty good too. And it looks like shells were used simultaneously by Hurriwind and Trix. That's the second time that's happened this game.
Yeah.
They do need to be a little bit better about not overlapping those perfectly, because that's a spot where it saves Ataraxia. But I wonder if Qvo just wants to get in there and use that ultimate and try and end the game at that point for Dignitas, because they had a lot of pressure on the Titan. It lost half its health from just fire minions alone.
And at that point, especially with the Bacchus dead already, the spreading that we were talked about doesn't feel as important. Zyrhoes can maybe get some punishment on it if you're too grouped. I wonder if that's what Qvofred is thinking. Maybe he doesn't want to go in and all of us get hit by the same stuff, but you're less punishment in that point than I think ever in that fight. So I think you're right. There's certainly some room for Qvofred to move in there and maybe get more of a punish, because at the end of that fight, they find a very nice execute from Deathwalker, and that at least slows this game down a bit. They'll have some time to get this mid-Phoenix back up and try and regen some health on this Titan, but Dignitas are looking tougher and tougher to beat.
Qvo's lurking in this left side jungle. I believe he is on a ward, though.
Yes.
Yeah, he's past it. But I like his idea. Just lurk. I mean, who could ever 1v1 him at this point in the game?
That's a good point. We know he's over there, but, like, well,
what are we going to do about it? Yeah. I don't like it. Well, Adapting's actually going to blink for him.
I love this. Adapting is unafraid.
He's
in fact,
beads.
he's got him slow and he's faster. He knows he has the Mad Guy's Cloak too to get him away. Finally, he baits the blink and leaves instantly. It was about the blink.
Yeah, Qvo almost big-brained him there. He tried to 180, almost feather step via blink.
Right.
Get behind him and try and mix him up, basically, to use a fighting game term. Just didn't end up working.
That was crazy, wasn't it? Man, that's seeing two of our best. They didn't quite duke it out, but I like how close they were over there.
Again, the
collie walk.
the Toy Story like monster that now Adapting is with all these katanas on him.
EmilZy goes in one more time. Variety's the one knocked up. Deathwalker goes right to the back line, looking for Ataraxia. Argus comes through as well. That's good damage, but it's EmilZy the only one who's low, and he pays for his crimes. Hurriwind's the one that gets the kill. Oh, look at the damage from Zyrhoes yet again. Deathwalker finds a double. Qvofred at least gets vote. That's a critical kill. The dual lane taken out, but now Qvofred comes over with a double of his own, and it's time for the Kali waterfall as she comes through.
No, he doesn't get his ultimate off. Knocked up by Zyrhoes, and he puts him down right away. Now it's the two tanks from Dignitas left standing, but that's not enough to bring down the Jormungandr. Zyrhoes wins this fight.
Yes.
Single-handedly.
Yes.
For Pittsburgh Knights.
And I get why damage Jormungandr's happening.
Yes. This is the poster for damage Jorm. I mean, he eviscerates Ataraxia and Hurriwind at like 400 damage plus per land of the World Serpent. It's also a knockup, by the way. And he's
Wait, all of them?
Yeah, all of them.
Wait, they're all knockups?
They sure are. Each entrance and exit is a knockup. 350 plus 40% on just the crash down. If you're getting hit by the knock up initially as well, that's another 175 plus 20%. You did a lot of damage there, and then that game was over if Qvo gets the ultimate off. The game's over from that position, but the stealth, submerge, perfect by Zyrhoes.
It's just very, very well played by Dignitas,
or rather
by Zyrhoes. But I mean, the Knights, like you said, it's very fortunate. I don't know if EmilZy can be the one that's standing at the front of the fights anymore. I know he has to, but every single time he's gone in, he has just been blown up. Hurriwind and Ataraxia do way too much damage here at this point of the game. Is there any way to mix that up, though? Is that just how it has to be?
That's the way it's got to be. EmilZy's job is to die in these team fights, honestly. I mean, you have to be the one to get in there and take cooldowns so that Zyrhoes can do that, and Deathwalker can stay and fight. That's what you need to be doing in those spots.
Well, EmilZy doing his job then, and it's worked out for Pittsburgh Knights in that last fight. I don't know if it's worked out to the tune, though, of this FG. Dignitas are here and ready to rumble, but no Aegis available for Ataraxia, no relics at all for Hurriwind. You can see him way in the back of the fight. He knows he's not safe, and Deathwalker blinks in right away. He wants Ataraxia and hurry, but Argus comes through and knocks up 2. Variety has to leave.
Variety very low. Don't know if he has a teleport ready, but a couple ultimates used on the side of Pittsburgh Knights as well. Qvo still lurking, looking for Zyrhoes. He still has Blink, and that's enough to get out of there right away.
But Zyrhoes goes up into his ultimate. The first crash doesn't find much, and this is already a huge fight for Dignitas, where with everything else used, that World Serpent's on cooldown that's enough.
And Nightcrawler from adapting. And both relics from Zyrhoes simultaneously. The man who single-handedly won the fight last time for Pittsburgh Knights now a lot more vulnerable.
Zyrhoes still lurking around nearby. Deathwalker's teleported in, so he can come from the back. And they're going to try and all in onto Zyrhoes to get things started. Ataraxia blows him up right away, but Deathwalker's on the back of this fight as well, doing plenty of damage of his own. Adapting finds Hurriwind. Ataraxia has now used his dash, but they're going to try and lock down Variety. Good Aegis gets away from the damage from the bludgeon, but Ataraxia ends up falling. Adapting finds a double.
Qvo finds his target, gets the heal, still in that execute range though. And Adapting ended up falling. Variety's going to be able to chase down EmilZy, no problem whatsoever. Frostbound Qvofred gets the job done. Variety with a 2v1 in the jungle, and now it's just Deathwalker, but can Dignitas even get Enhanced Fire Giant? Another 50-minute brawl between these two.
Yeah, this is right what it said on the 10, isn't it? For this set, man. It's exactly what you want.
You know how we put like first game's at 11, second game 1:30. It's a guess, you know.
Sure.
You never really know. It could be earlier, it could be later. We all knew that was not going to be a 1:30 start for the next set. I mean, it's game 2 is even over and it's almost 1:30. These two, we always knew we're going to be really, really close in this set.
Well, Dignitas, they want to try and push in with just these 3. Qvofred's enough damage onto this Phoenix by himself, and as good as Deathwalker is, I don't think he can move in and stop the Phoenix. But he'll have Zyrhoes in a few seconds. This can't be a Titan end, but Dignitas are doing very good to come clean up these objectives while they can, or reset these respawn timers on them, and see if they can get down these Firebirds.
Zyrhoes still no relics. He needs to be careful here. Qvo could turn and burn. Kind of surprised he didn't, honestly.
I don't know if he recognized that he had the opportunity. World Serpent, now that those first 2 have hit, yeah, for sure he's going to be returning with that 3rd one, so really not much potential there, but he at least forced Dignitas out. But now with everybody pack up, they might even have some potential to come right towards this FG. Pittsburgh Knights got to push out these waves now, because there's going to be fire minions coming in.
The good news for the Knights is that it's the mid and right side waves, not the left. So these are the 2 easier ones to handle while still juggling that Fire Giant. And Enhanced Fire Giant does enough of a job defending itself these days that sometimes you don't have to worry about being there right away. You can just come in and clean up the fight.
Man, this has been so impressive from the Knights, I feel like, to hold on with this Dignitas team who've looked so strong lately. They haven't quite, though, been able to close it out or win a fight convincingly. Variety has been a good part of that. I think Hurriwind has more than earned this spot right now, man. I've been so impressed with how he's looked as well. And, of course, Trixtank. I mean, I don't know what more to say.
0-0 and 18. That is the that's perfection for your support. Sometimes it's correct for your support to die instead of someone else, but I don't think Trixtank's found himself in that position at all this game.
No, he's played so well. Elixir of defense coming through for him at this point. He's doing that before selling the boots, by the way, as Zyrhoes in some trouble. But a good stun comes through. Variety not going to be able to complete that final swing of the bludgeon. And
Watch
here's
out.
Classic adapting, looping all the way around to the back of the fight. Not like what we saw from him game 1 at all, but he still hasn't found his time to go in yet. Now Trixtank drops the ultimate, but adapting is right in there finding Hurriwind, but he can't get it. He has to go up into the ultimate.
Here comes the World Serpent. Huge shield onto Hurriwind, though. Book of the Dead and Shell, I believe, used. As Qvo can't go there, but a great polymorph from Hurriwind actually gets Qvo out. Zyrhoes at a great angle in order to kill him and just didn't get the opportunity.
This is what I'm talking about, man. Hurric's been playing lights out on this polymorph, man. That was great to get it back out. But the thing is, as good as the polymorph was, the initial hit from Zyrhoes wasn't there to actually land it submerging in. So he had to look for it afterwards, and the polymorph came through and stopped him. But what another crazy fight. I love what we saw from adapting. He just couldn't find a way in.
It was a death ball from Dignitas, and that's where not having a traditional mage ends up hurting you a little bit, because normally a traditional mage blows you up forever being that close to one another. But when you know that Zyrhoes' ultimate was still coming up from that position, they're able to group up and play pretty well. Better job that time as well of Trix and Hurriwind not overlapping shells. They're 3 seconds apart on cooldown right now, 3 or 4. So you ended up using them in just about perfect succession to make sure they stayed alive.
We still got 3 pairs of boots 53 minutes in, 54 now. Very surprised to see that. We'll see if those end up getting sold off on there for Zyrhoes. EmilZy and for, I think Trixtank was the other one that still has his Reinforced Greaves. So we'll see if they elect to drop those. So still some power spikes yet to be attained. Even 54 minutes into this game, man. It has been a slugfest. Just a back and forth knockout brawl between these two teams. And just one person out of position, one polymorph that doesn't land, or adapting not quite able to get into Nightcrawler, Qvofred being a little bit late on his ult, and this game is over for someone.
Hasn't happened yet, though. And then, man, just really impressive between these two. And now Pittsburgh Knights have nearly gotten their mid-Phoenix back up and ready. I mean, they don't have to worry about it too much now. They've got 2-3 more fire waves they have to worry about. And I was kind of questioning this late game Golden Blade still there for adapting. Normally you see this item sold by now, but I think it's good enough to clear these fire waves. It lets them still have some relevant wave clear. And in situations like we saw where Dignitas is deathballing, right, you get to actually still deal damage to someone even if your autos get body blocked.
It looks like you were right to mention this mid-Phoenix. Dignitas want to be here for it, and yet again, adapting on the loop round, but I think they've spotted him out. Variety is there to beat him, so Deathwalker has to go in to prevent the Pincer from landing on top of adapting, who goes to the red buff instead. He's safe for now. Dignitas have been pushed out, and the buff secured.
Man, a blink from Deathwalker traded out for Variety's ultimate. That's a win for Dignitas because, of course, that Eagles rally will be up much more quickly than that of the blink for Deathwalker. But I don't blame Dignitas for thinking it's easier to siege a Phoenix and get an enhanced Fire Giant right now. Though I will say, this Primal Fury's been standing forever in this game, and that's what makes it easier to get this buff. I think that I would have liked to see. I'm sure at some point one of these hunters had the time to go over and solo down this Primal Fury. It'll take them mere seconds at full build. Go over and get it for your team, and that means it makes it that much easier for you to burn the Enhanced Fire Giant.
54,000 for Ataraxia. Speaking of these hunters, 44,000 for Zyrhoes. In 56 minutes, those numbers aren't quite as insane as you might normally expect, but still very good from our carries here in this game, as EmilZy has been poked down substantially. You talked about how you're okay with him being the one that ends up taking the punishment, but it's got to be for a good cause. Zyrhoes' speeds are forced out. That's all Trixtank. The poke onto EmilZy and the beads from Zyrhoes.
He's been doing it all, man. He has really been doing it all for this team. Adapting's on a ward right now, so Variety knows exactly where he is, as is Ataraxia, but that's still a win still a fight that Ataraxia will not win up against the bug. Adapting just making Dignitas uncomfortable.
Yes.
And that's the right idea.
I think even if they know where he is, it might even be slightly better in that case, because they have to play a little bit more defensively, as you highlighted. So adapting, still lurking on the back end. Got to be careful, though. Looks like beads are forced out. He's been stunned. There comes the beads from him. Up into the Nightcrawler as well. So this is where it no longer favors the Knights, where all his stuff has been forced from him to get away.
Trix, another stun onto EmilZy. Sprint used by Trixtank. They want to commit to this. EmilZy's got his blink, so that gets him away. Dignitas now kind of left without a spot to go, so they'll go back towards Enhanced Fire Giant, of course.
And at least start pulling it a little bit. The Knights now have to make a decision if they want to make it in. Adapting, even without all his safety, is still looping around the back end of the fight. That's a nice knockup from EmilZy and able to get the Intoxi onto a couple targets. Argus already out as well. But yet again, Adapting can't get in on the backside. He blinks back in now that Zyrhoes is here to collapse and find the knockups. Good damage on Ataraxia and forces out the Aegis. And the knockup can come through for all the damage, but the execute a hair too early. Doesn't matter. Zyrhoes gets the kill anyway.
Qvo gets one. No execute target though. Qvo does not get two. Vote able to put him down in time. Deathwalker still has his blink, but Trix healthy enough. Ataraxia will not be healthy enough as Deathwalker finds his 5th in a row. They get 3 for 1, and now Pittsburgh Knights stick the back.
Backing. They got him to come over to the left side, actually. There's a big wave over there, so that has to be stopped. But I think... What do you think they could go for FG in that situation to go ahead and start pushing down a Phoenix?
Yeah.
What more did you want to see from them?
Yeah, I think I would have liked to see one back, the rest get FG, and then we back it all together and start pushing for Phoenixes. Now, I don't think that you can't even go for FG now because Variety and Trixtank being full HP just delay you so much that you can't be in the middle of a Fire Giant. You just won't be able to do it. Phoenix Siege is the way to do it.
Well, they've gotten the tier 2, and Trixtank and Variety, as you said, have a much harder time stopping them from getting into Phoenix range. A good Scourge, a good stun to devote, but that's all of it at once. And now he'll be able to put his DPS into the actual structure itself. But Trixtank, though, they're doing everything they can to harass Vote. They're not giving him time to freely swing away. The Phoenix finally comes down. Deathwalker gets Variety. We're still 10 seconds away from this Hera rejoining the fray. Maybe a chance for the Knights if they want to all in it, but it has to be done now. It has to be done quick. Trixtank doing everything he can to keep the hopes alive, but Vote completes the deicide, and that does it. The Knights answer back almost an hour long, and they get the second game. Man, this set is everything that you could want from two of the best here in the SPL.
I just don't know who Qvo's target was in that last team fight because I don't think he got a whole lot of target resets all of game 2, and that's a huge way that you get to waterfall these late game team fights.
Right.
And that just didn't really happen for Dignitas. Really, I don't think Dignitas really messed up a whole lot.
No.
I do think they overcommitted a little bit into that fight when they know Adapting is behind them and he's got no beads and no ult. You can play really patiently from that position and wait for Adapting to loop around and really punish him for it. But other than that, I think that was just the composition actually working for Pittsburgh Knights, where this Jormungandr mid gets to do whatever he wants in these team fights.
Man, and what Adapting really does there is he opens up the door for Zyrhoes to come in and make those big ultimates, right? Because like you said, you have to keep looking over your shoulder for this Arachne, and what is she up to? And when you kind of fall together and you move through those choke points and you're grouped up, Zyrhoes like, oh, it's my time now to come through as the Jormungandr and hit everyone.
Yes, and I can't get hit, by the way. It's crazy
you
what
can't
that
hit
character
me.
does, man. It's absolutely nuts. And by the way, Deathwalker in the late game had just turned it around a lot. I mean, he got 5 kills in a row that game. In the early stages, he was doing very well. Then that mid game happened, and Dignitas started blowing up the tanks very, very easily.
Right.
In the end, Deathwalker ends up staying alive, gets a big execute onto Variety to help end the game from that position. I like the idea for Dignitas' tank to try and kill Vote, knowing he didn't have Aegis. They were just a little short on damage.
Just couldn't quite get to him. That was the right idea, though. But man, just a big matchup here. I wonder if the desk has anything to say after watching an hour of two of our best playing some really good Smite.
Well, that's exactly what we were talking about when we were talking about the Yorm mid and the potential of what it could do. Tom and Taco here, in case you forgot after an hour-long Smite game. But when we break it down, Taco, you and I were talking, and we're like, Yorm didn't impress us in game number 1, but did we really see what it can do? I think we did this time.
Yeah, for sure. I love the way that Aggro pitched it there at the end, because it really did feel like Adapting started making a lot of openings come about for Zyrhoes to really work into the back line. Hurriwind as well. He had some really sick polymorphs that I think saved a few engagements for Dignitas, but ultimately when you're under that much pressure all the time, it's just so incredibly difficult to survive, and he took a little bit of a hit damage-wise because he had to sacrifice some of those damage-oriented items to go for the defensive options like the Spirit Robe, try and give himself a little bit more self-peel and survivability throughout those long extended team fights, but unfortunately it just fell a little bit short there.
Watching what Dignitas was trying to do here, Pittsburgh Knights, what they were trying to do here, Zyrhoes, this is obviously the centerpiece, but watch, when it goes successful everyone on Dignitas is right here in the middle. Zyrhoes did get punched a couple of times when he was kind of by himself, but Pittsburgh Knights come here, and as long as they team up with Zyrhoes and dive Dignitas along with him, then he can't get turned on as soon as he pops up.
That last play, by the way, I think might have potentially even saved the Pittsburgh Knights from losing the game outright. If Qvofred had actually been left to his own devices with only Deathwalker there, who's to say what could have actually happened next? But Dignitas, just when it all came down to the 50 minutes plus, we started seeing a little bit of that resurgence too of the potency of Xbalanque. Variety had some phenomenal, I think, focus onto Vote, and there were multiple instances where Variety's just 2v1 or 3v1ing in the back line, and it took so much effort from Pittsburgh Knights to keep their Hunter alive, but eventually I think the fatigue also started to wear in, and Dignitas just could not keep up.
52,000 player damage here for Zyrhoes. Only 3 kills, but certainly helping his team line it up, and you can look at this draft and see what happens. Zyrhoes activates the ultimate, Vote turns the lights off, EmilZy jumps in, Adapting finds somebody to target, and then when everything's all said and done, DW goes, all right, who's still alive, and let me execute them. And you can see Zyrhoes just aggressively speaking, because that's exactly what this comp was, Taco. This was an aggressive composition.
It's the forced dispersion, whether it's the Jormungandr or the Bacchus or the Arachne. One of those 3 gods was causing some kind of forced separation, and then add on to that the Darkest Night, like you mentioned, Tom, and it's just so much chaos. But it was calculated chaos from Pittsburgh Knights, I think, and it was a little bit too hectic for even Qvofred to look for a response, because Vote was just constantly being babysat by EmilZy. That is exactly, by the way, not a shot at EmilZy or anything like that. He did his job to the fullest extent, because he kept Vote alive on numerous occasions.
Listen, man, when you need a Rosalina, you need one. Absolutely gets the babysit. And, well, we can go out on a Friday night.